From the early days of the colonies to the present day, the American political system has undergone many changes and developments. So, let's explore the fascinating history of American politics. The American political system has its roots in the Colonial era, when the British government established a system of governance in the colonies. The British government appointed governors to oversee the colonies and enact laws on their behalf. However, the colonists were not satisfied with this system and began to demand more autonomy and representation. This led to the American Revolution, which began in 1775 and lasted until 1783. The colonists fought for their independence from British rule and established the United States of America. The first American political system was established by the Constitution of the United States, which was adopted in 1787. This system was based on the principles of federalism, separation of powers, and checks and balances. The Constitution established a federal government with three branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. The legislative branch, also known as Congress, is responsible for making laws. It is composed of two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The executive branch, headed by the President, is responsible for enforcing laws. The judicial branch, headed by the Supreme Court, is responsible for interpreting laws. Over the years, the American political system has undergone many changes and developments. One of the most significant changes was the expansion of voting rights. Initially, only white male property owners were allowed to vote. However, over time, the franchise was expanded to include women, African Americans, and other minorities. The 19th century saw the rise of political parties in the American political system. The first political parties were the Federalist Party and the Democratic Republican Party, which were established in the early 1800s. The Federalist Party was led by Alexander Hamilton and favored a strong central government. The Democratic Republican Party was led by Thomas Jefferson and favored a more decentralized government. In the mid-1800s, the Whig Party emerged as a major political force in the American political system. The Whig Party was formed in opposition to President Andrew Jackson and his policies. The Whig Party was composed of various factions, including Northern industrialists, Southern planters, and Western farmers. The party was dissolved in the 1850s due to internal divisions over the issue of slavery. The Republican Party was established in 1854 as a response to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which allowed for the expansion of slavery into new territories. The Republican Party was composed of various groups, including abolitionists, Northern industrialists, and Western farmers. The party's first presidential candidate was John C. Fremont, who lost to Democrat James Buchanan in the 1856 election. The Civil War, which began in 1861 and lasted until 1865, had a profound impact on the American political system. The war was fought between the Union, led by President Abraham Lincoln, and the Confederacy, led by President Jefferson Davis. The Union emerged victorious, and slavery was abolished with the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in 1865. The Reconstruction Era, which followed the Civil War, saw the passage of several amendments to the Constitution. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, and the 15th Amendment granted voting rights to African American men. However, Reconstruction was marred by violence and political corruption, and many of the gains made during this period were later reversed. The Progressive Era, which began in the late 1800s and lasted until the early 1900s, saw the rise of a new political movement in the American political system. The progressive movement was characterized by a desire to reform the political system and address social and economic problems. Progressives advocated for a range of reforms, including the regulation of big business, the expansion of voting rights, and the establishment of a social safety net. The 20th century saw the emergence of the two-party system in the American political system. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party became the dominant political parties, and third-party candidates had little success in national elections. The two parties have different ideologies and platforms, with the Democratic Party generally favoring a more liberal approach to government and the Republican Party generally favoring a more conservative approach. In recent years, the American political system has become increasingly polarized and divided. The rise of social media and the 24-hour news cycle have contributed to this polarization, as people are able to consume news and information that reinforces their existing beliefs and biases. The 2016 presidential election, in particular, was marked by intense polarization and division, with both major parties nominating candidates who were widely disliked by the opposing party. The 2020 presidential election was also highly contentious, with President Donald Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden engaging in a bitter campaign. The election was further complicated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to a surge in mail-in voting and allegations of voter fraud. Despite these challenges, the election was ultimately decided in favor of Joe Biden, who won both the popular vote and the Electoral College. In conclusion, the American political system has a rich and complex history. From its roots in the colonial era to the present day, the American political system has undergone many changes and developments. The system has been shaped by wars, social movements, and political ideologies. While the American political system has faced many challenges over the years, it remains a cornerstone of American democracy. As we look to the future, it is important to remember the lessons of the past and work towards a more inclusive and equitable political system for all Americans. Thank you for watching. Remember to be safe and responsible. And until next time, be curious.